Welcome back to TC Talks. I'm your host, TC, here with another episode for you. And today we're going to be talking about the upcoming Week 13 games on Thanksgiving and Black Friday. But before I dive into that, I want to encourage you to follow, subscribe, share all the fancy internet things. And let's go ahead and dive into these upcoming games, starting with Thanksgiving. To kick off the three-game slate, we got the Detroit Lions taking on the Green Bay Packers. And this is a big game for both of these teams. With the way that the wild card race is shaping up, it really might come down to which team is going to be able to win the division and overtake the Chicago Bears. But to do that, one of them's got to beat the other to kick things off. And right now, the Green Bay Packers have a half game over the Detroit Lions, and this is something that they're going to need to really win if they want a chance going forward into the division and also to maintain pace in the wild card. Because as it stands right now, you have the Seattle Seahawks. They're 8-3, 7-3. The 49ers also sitting at 7-4. Both teams looking pretty good overall. Then you also got the Buccaneers, the Panthers, both at 6-4. And it's a tricky situation for these teams. I'm sorry, the 49ers are 8-4, not 7-4. But in either case, that's the stress of this situation for the Green Bay Packers and the Detroit Lions, is they're both trying to vie for that wild card spot. And with so many teams in the mix, and with only a game and a half up for the Green Bay Packers and only a game up compared to some of these teams for the Detroit Lions, a loss here for each team is going to be very crucial and very possibly detrimental to their playoff aspirations, especially if the Chicago Bears are able to keep winning the way that they do. So the Green Bay Packers, they came off a big win against the divisional opponent, against the Minnesota Vikings, but over and above all, playing against the sorry Minnesota Vikings this season and coming away with a big win is really not as big of a win as you would think. The last year Minnesota Vikings obviously able to make some damage. The 9-led Minnesota Vikings, not so much. And I think we're going to have to change the 9 maybe to 5, 6, 7. Who really knows? But in either case, the Green Bay Packers coming away with a win last week, and the Detroit Lions also coming away with a win last week against the New York Giants. Now, it was a scary game as we saw the Giants keep pace in that contest, and it was something that, Jameis Winston, to his credit, was able to keep the Giants in that game the whole time. Came up a little short at the end, but the Detroit Lions, they did not look very good in that game. Like I said, Jameis Winston able to do basically what he wanted with the offense. The defense not really looking too good for Detroit. And then offensively, Jared Goff, kind of more of something that had to do with the volume of the amount of passes he was doing, more so than the efficiency of his passes. Thank God for Jahmyr Gibbs for the Detroit Lions, though, coming away with my 55 fantasy points, getting me another win, my 5th win in a row in my league to be able to make a push for the playoffs. Absolutely love you for that. But outside of that, Jahmyr Gibbs doing what he needs to do for his team, and he's really the big reason that the Lions were able to come away with a win in this contest. I think without Jahmyr Gibbs' effort, without what he was able to do, it's going to be a tough road for the Lions to be able to come away with the victory in that one. So, looking ahead to this contest, looking ahead to which team is really going to do what, we saw the Green Bay Packers kind of already bully the Detroit Lions earlier in this year, but the Green Bay Packers have kind of been back and forth all over the place for their past stretch of games. We saw losses to the Browns, for example. We saw a tough game against the New York Giants, just like the Detroit Lions just had. So it's going to be interesting to see which version of this team really shows up in this contest. So for me, I want to believe in Jordan Love. He's got all these weapons. God knows what's going to happen. They're supposed to be getting Josh Jacobs back potentially. So this offense could look even better than it did last week against the Minnesota Vikings. But at the same time, you still have that Detroit Lions offense that has just as many weapons. Amon-Ra, Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, even though he's had a quiet season. And, it's just one of these contests where you want to be able to say definitively who's going to be able to win. But honestly, this is as up in the air as a coin toss, and I really don't want to be making too much assertion as to who's going to win, but I have to give you a prediction, and I'm going to be going with the Detroit Lions because the Chicago Bears need the Detroit Lions to win just to help aid a little bit of a cushion if they are the ones who in fact win this contest. So moving on to the next game, you got the Kansas City Chiefs taking on the Dallas Cowboys. And the Dallas Cowboys, they're coming off of a major win against the divisional leader of the NFC East, their division, the Philadelphia Eagles. The Philadelphia Eagles in a hot start to that game. The Cowboys ice cold, no points in the first half, down 21-0 going into the third quarter. And what do the Cowboys do? The Cowboys ride again. Yes, they didn't ride off into the sunset. They rode into the danger, into the Philadelphia Eagles, and were able to take down the reigning Super Bowl champions. And we'll talk more about the Philadelphia Eagles in just a second. But the Cowboys, the offense looking pretty good. And honestly, Dak Prescott with this offense is pretty scary. I really wanted to count the Cowboys out just because I hate hearing so much about the Dallas Cowboys. I think we could all agree on that. However, Dak and this offense have been functioning really well. The defense has actually improved just minutely, coming away with stops when they need to, and the offense able to take advantage of those situations. So the Dallas Cowboys looking pretty gosh darn good, especially after beating up on the Philadelphia Eagles in a tremendous come-from-behind win. They're going up against the Kansas City Chiefs, who just last week got back into winning fashion by taking down the Indianapolis Colts, who have been one of the hottest teams all year. And one of the ways they were able to do that was by completely shutting down the leading rusher in the league, and I'm talking about Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan Taylor, very quiet in that contest. I think he had about 15 carries in this game, and that's just something that the Kansas City defense was able to do, is shut down Jonathan Taylor and take away the opportunities for him to win this game for the Indianapolis Colts. And the Colts, not being able to rely on the ground game, had to rely on Indiana Jones, and unfortunately not able to get it done. And the Kansas City Chiefs front line, Chris Jones absolutely dominating up front, and they were able to come away with the win. It wasn't anything spectacular. Yes, it took a little bit of overtime heroics, a little Mahomes magic, so to speak, but at the same time, a win is a win, and a win against a, at least record-wise, very superior team compared to the Kansas City Chiefs. You always got to chalk that up as a well-fought victory. So Kansas City looking pretty good going into this game. Dallas Cowboys, though, also looking very good going into this game. Both these teams were down pretty bad going towards the second half of their games, and they were able to come away with big-time wins. So both teams moving in the right direction. The Kansas City Chiefs able to get into a winning record. The Dallas Cowboys now fighting for a winning record in this upcoming contest. And I want to be able to give the credit to Dallas. I think Dallas can win this game, but after such a hard-fought victory, a short week, I'm going to have to give it to the Kansas City Chiefs, because the Cowboys, I really just don't know what to think about them. Yes, the offense looks good when it's going great, but at the same time, we've seen them derailed too many times for me to be able to be definitively saying, yes, the Cowboys are the caliber to beat the Kansas City Chiefs. So, Kansas City wins this game, not handily, not easily, but I do think that defense mixed with Mahomes magic yet again, I think that Kansas City Chiefs fans, you're going to be getting a Thanksgiving miracle. But moving on to the last game of Thanksgiving, the final game, arguably the worst game of the contests, is the Baltimore Ravens taking on the possible, likely, Joe Burrow-led Cincinnati Bengals. In this game, I don't even know what to say. Two beaten-up quarterbacks, Lamar Jackson dealing with a little bit of an ankle/foot issue, and then Joe Burrow finally coming back after finally healing his disgusting toe that he injured early on in the season. So, which team's going to show up? Are we going to see the Cincinnati Bengals high-flying offense being able to go up and take down the Baltimore Ravens, who have been flying high on 4 or 5 straight victories at this point? Or are they going to be taken for a ride by this Baltimore Ravens team, who's going to be swinging on that momentum to keep going towards the playoffs? The Ravens, after their win last week and the loss that the Chicago Bears gifted the Baltimore Ravens, put that in your pocketbook. You could keep that, Baltimore. But the Baltimore Ravens now in first place in their division as well. So it's an interesting situation for these teams, because the Bengals, Doesn't matter if they win or lose. The Baltimore Ravens, it is a big deal if they win or lose. They're finally back in the playoff picture. Not just the hunt, not in it, but kind of not. They are 100% back in the playoff picture, and they've done that winning games both with and without Lamar Jackson. Now, with Lamar Jackson a little shaken up, I do have some question marks about this team, but I do think that they're going to be able to do just enough to be able to outlast Joe Burrow and that Cincinnati Bengals offense, especially with the unfortunate injury to T. Higgins last week. And above all, you look at this team, Joe Burrow going in to replace Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco has kept the offense going. Joe Flacco's put up a number of points with this offense all season long with Joe Burrow being sidelined. So Joe Burrow coming back may be able to squeeze out an extra scoring touchdown, drive, whatever they're able to do. That might be the difference, against the Chicago Bears. That would have been the difference. However, I can't say definitively that Joe Burrow being able to do that little sprinkle that Joe Flacco wasn't able to is going to make the difference in this game, because Lamar Jackson is looking pretty good. And that Ravens defense, they've gone from a bottom feeder to pretty middle of the road, almost middle of the road. They're at 19th ranked defense at this point. So for me to be able to discount the Baltimore Ravens defense or offense would be wrong. But we can completely discount the Bengals defense. It is absolute trash. So if we're just looking at what both teams have been bringing, I got to give credit to the Baltimore Ravens. I really do think that they have a lot more on the line. And right now, I think they're just the better team to be able to pick up the victory in the final game on Thanksgiving. And I've touched about this game before. Go over it really quickly. For those of you who did not see my previous video, the Chicago Bears, they're going to be traveling to Philadelphia to take on the Eagles. And this is the big game for both teams. The Eagles coming off of a rough loss, like aforementioned, against the Dallas Cowboys. But the Eagles still in first place in the division, still looking pretty good overall. And there's a lot to be helpful for this team. The Chicago Bears, they're your definition of a solid fundamental football team yet. But the Eagles, this is the type of team, regardless if you think the Bears are good, bad, middle of the road, lucky, whatever it is, Jalen Hurts and this team need to be able to rise to the occasion and beat up on the Chicago Bears. As a big Bears fan, you know how much I like the Chicago Bears. The Eagles need to be able to beat teams like the Chicago Bears to be able to maintain their dominance and be able to stay ahead in the power rankings, in the playoff conversation, because that's just what you expect and what the Eagles need to expect of themselves if they want to have any chance to repeat this upcoming offseason. So the Eagles, they got to play their hardest. Saquon Barkley, he's got to get something going on the ground. He's had a very minute, very quiet season, and this is his game to break out. The Chicago Bears, it's no secret, the Bears' run defense, absolutely pitiful. The only thing keeping that defense afloat is the fact that they're able to generate turnovers. So if Saquon can go back to not fumbling footballs, the Eagles are going to be looking pretty good. But if he's going to repeat what he did against the Dallas Cowboys, which I wouldn't mind, I'm not opposed to Saquon leaving the ball on the ground a little bit, just fumbling the pigskin, that's fine. But if the Eagles do want to stay on top of the division, in the hunt for the top spot in the NFC playoff picture, they got to be able to secure the ball, and they got to be able to beat teams like the Chicago Bears. Likewise, the Chicago Bears, if they want to stay on top of the NFC North, if they want to be seen as a true contender and not just the same old Chicago Bears, well, then they got to be able to play a solid game against the Philadelphia Eagles. Not win necessarily, but keep it a competitive, tight game. I'm not talking about scoring in garbage time, closing the gap between the Eagles. I'm talking from quarter 1 to quarter 3, you got to play, or quarter 4, I should say, because 4 quarters in sports, hence quarter 4. All right, we get it. But the Chicago Bears, they need to play all 4 quarters, and we saw them do that against a very good Steelers defense, and they were able to keep pace with the Steelers even after a terrible mistake by Caleb Williams early on in the first quarter, fumbling into the end zone to give TJ Watt the upper hand over his brother JJ. Regardless of all that, the Chicago Bears, stuck to it, scored a touchdown in every quarter, and that's what the Chicago Bears team needs to do going forward. The Eagles, they could absolutely run up the score, or they could show up for one half and not the other. The Chicago Bears, they like to do something like that too. It's just instead of consecutive quarters, they show up in the first quarter and the fourth quarter and skip out on the middle chunk of quarters. So the Chicago Bears, if they really want to turn the page, make a true lasting impact, and prove that the Ben Johnson era is in fact a new wave Chicago Bears team, they got to be able to keep it close with the top talent in the NFC, and that starts right here with this game against the Philadelphia Eagles. If they're able to keep it close, I got hope for their games against the Green Bay Packers. They got 2 of them. Then they got to finalize they get a rematch with the Detroit Lions, and hopefully they're able to do something other than get completely blown out again. But it all comes down to this game. What are the Chicago Bears going to be able to do? Are they going to score? Are they going to flatline? It's all on Caleb Williams being able to execute. No more crazy, ridiculous overthrows, miscues, any of that stuff. The Chicago Bears need to lock in and get ahead in this contest. But if I have to pick a victory for this game, I'm going to have to go with the Eagles, even though I do love my Chicago Bears. But I'm going to be nice. This is going to be a 37-31 final score in favor of the Philadelphia Eagles. It's going to go into overtime, and it's going to be a rough game. What's going to happen is we're going to see the Chicago Bears get into field goal range to tie it up in the end of the fourth quarter. It's going to go to overtime, and the Eagles are going to score on their first possession of overtime. That's my prediction of these upcoming games. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments section below. If you enjoy the video, if I get any sort of response that says that, hey, do the rest of week 13, let me know all your takes. I want to know what you think about every team. I will gladly do so, and it will hopefully be about this length for the rest of those games, because I want to make this one a little bit extra special for you guys and really go into some of the situations, not just in the game, but in the future outlook of these teams. So let me know what you guys think about all these games down in the comment section below. If you enjoy the content, follow, like, share, subscribe, all the fancy things that you can do, and I'll see you next time.